Hey, Universe, we review The Rock. What's up, Universe, and welcome back to the web's first must-see comic and nerd culture show. Welcome to Comic Universe, guys. I'm your host, as always, C-Dubbs. Guys, and I'm riding solo on this video. And guys, I am going to do a unique comic review, if you will. About a week ago, me and the wife took a 2-week vacation, and a part of our vacation landed us on The Rock, also known as Alcatraz, if you will. And on Alcatraz, as you're exiting, they do have a gift shop, like all tourist attractions do. And there was about 13 different comic books, and I happened to pick up issue number 1. Now, issue number 1 also happens to be the most famous escape attempt, and I should say, possibly escape, in Alcatraz history. This is also the one that, if you are a big Mythbusters fan, that they try to prove or discredit if you could actually float away from Alcatraz, like if you could actually escape Alcatraz and float away using nothing but raincoats, if you will. And it was deemed plausible. A little dangerous because of the time of the year in which, everything was going, because of how cold and choppy the water is, and not to mention any potential, sea lions, sharks, things like that could attack them. But if you've ever been to Alcatraz, it's not like it's an impossible swim in terms of length or mileage to shore. It is definitely plausible, especially if you're using the coast, the current, to actually guide you along instead of fighting it. If you were fighting it, maybe a totally different story. But yeah, this particular comic I picked up, and I actually just took the time now to read it myself. When you're on vacation, I just didn't really feel like doing anything, any work. I was just relaxing, if you will. But yeah, it is actually not too bad of a comic book. It kind of puts you into the insight of the actual prisoners, if you will. Most of it, I would say, is real hearsay, because there's no way to really tell the full extent of everything, that the conversations and everything. The plan started off with 4 guys and ended up being just 3 guys kind of getting away. And the last guy who stayed within the prison was actually the one who essentially came up with the plans and ratted the guys out, or whatever the case may be, and he ended up, kind of paying for it, spending the majority of his life behind bars. And he was one of the last prisoners, actually, to leave the Rock, if you will, when they closed it down. And this is actually, the artist is Steve LeBeer, the writer is Sarah Ryan, and the colorist is Jeff Parker. And basically, this story, again, talks about these 4 guys, if you will. They're obviously not the real-life interpretation. It's just a custom drawing, if you will. But basically, Frank Morris, Alan West, Clarence Anglin, and John Anglin. These are the 4 guys that came up with the plan. Mainly Wes is the one that actually kind of did most of the work as I was reading through this comic book. And it goes on to kind of show their day-to-day life, how much they hated life and how much they just kind of thought about leaving and quitting, or I should say escaping, a day in and day out. And it even goes into telling about, some of the tools used, how the plan was designed. Some of it just to be honest, just sheer luck. That things worked out the way they did. If things, as time progressed within, prisons back in the day, they were given more freedoms and things to that nature. I know it's kind of an oxymoron to use freedom in a prison, but like things like a music hour, where they were allowed to actually have musical instruments for about an hour, which most of them couldn't play. So as they're making all this noise, the inmates would use that time frame to kind of scrape at the wall to kind of escape through the hole in the wall, climb up the vent, if you will, up the pipes, slide down the side of the building, use the raincoats to kind of jump over the barbed wire fence, and then use the rest of the raincoats. They would actually manufacture a life raft, if you will. And they were smart enough to actually take the accordion box, if you will, and just kind of pump it up with air, which gave them enough flotation to get off the island, if you will. But it just kind of goes on, and if it wasn't for that music hour, this is something that wouldn't have happened. In addition to that, just one of the inmates, he was actually really close, in terms of respect with the guards. he was one of those inmates that, he does all the work. He cleans, he paints, he does like maintenance work for them and everything like that. And he's always been a good boy, if you will, as they would say it. And so they kind of left him to his own devices because he was not a problem. He was helping, keeping everything clean, and he was just kind of a confidant in that regard. And they come up with this great idea that as he's painting and cleaning up in the ceiling area, that as he's sweeping, all the dirt would fall down, make everything dirtier down below. So he's like, well, why don't I just hang some blankets up, so this way, as I'm sweeping, okay, that dust, I can sweep it all into a corner and not everything just kind of falls down on everybody, all the officers and fellow inmates and on the floor and on the clean levels. And they're like, yeah, go ahead, no problem. It's because he was trusted and he put in that time and that work and that effort that they trusted him to do that. And it was in that little space that they would actually, manufacture the actual rafts, if you will, that they were putting together. But what was really awesome about this is that even when I was there, here's an image of the actual him, I should say, placing up the blankets, if you will. What was really cool and kind of funny in today's world, you just saw, how did you fall for that type of thing? Here's another image of kind of how the layout of the whole area is covered in blankets. So they had that whole little work area to work out in. Well, one of the guys was also, he worked in the barber shop on the island, if you will. And he would collect all the rancid hair that was being cut from the guys. And they actually manufactured dummy heads, if you will, and use that hair to be lifelike. And this is actually true. This part, you could actually go in, when you go to Alcatraz, I don't know if it's the authentic replica dummy head or not, but they actually have those particular cells that these inmates were in set up and designed and look like how they were when the cops found them that day trying to wake them. And it's just so funny that they would put these dummy heads throughout the night as they would dig through the wall, if you will. And it was so just absolutely like something out of a movie, right? We've all kind of seen Shawshank Redemption, if you will, and of course The Rock, and all the little nuances. And a lot of that from the movies actually came from this actual escape attempt. And it's just absolutely mind-blowing, in my opinion, that, this is how we got to this point in cinema of telling these types of stories. And here you can kind of see how they envisioned, I guess, how they would go. And there's the accordion box blowing up the raft as they ascended. What is really crazy, though, is that, like, as soon as they found all of this, they had alerted the Coast Guard, the Army, State and Highway Patrol, the local San Francisco Police Department, and Oakland as well. And they also told the Tribune, if you will, basically, in all news reports. They were out to get these guys. And what's really crazy is, as this predicts right here, is that, they were never found. We don't know if they drowned, if they died. 2 life vests were found, but they were never found with them, obviously. We don't know if they died, escaped, lived long, whatever the case may be. Died of hypothermia, got eaten by a shark, or attacked by a sea lion. But it's really cool that there's been 13 attempts that have actually been at least known to the public, and that was the only successful one. And I assume that the rest of the story, since there are 13 books, kind of tell the other stories of how those guys and those escapes attempted to go down. I only grabbed number 1 because it was the only one I was most interested in, and it was the one that had the most, was the most famous, if you will, and the only successful attempt. And a really cool shot here of the island as well, guys. But yeah, man, it was just really awesome, and just really, really cool. And here's the, oh, okay, there we go. There's what the actual, I haven't actually seen this page, what the actual heads look like. And I guess those were the correct dummy heads that they had. And these are the artists over here, guys. So yeah, I mean, overall, I really enjoyed this book. I mean, it's nothing to write home to mom about, if you will. But it was really, really cool. Just a quick novel idea, and I really took some pride in the fact that, that they would do this. I assumed to try to get more for kids because they actually had actual books. And my wife actually did buy an actual book about a guy who actually spent quite a bit of time there he wrote a novel, and he was actually there the day that we were there doing autographs. So she was like, "Yeah, I gotta have this book. I want him to sign it." And we took some video of it and everything like that. And the guy was really cool, but he was really old. We were advised that he was actually a newlywed of all of 2 weeks, which we thought was kind of cool. Obviously, he's no longer in Alcatraz. He's not a prisoner anymore. He did his time. Funny story, and it kind of makes you think that you could just do something and not necessarily know that you're committing a crime sometimes. And what really landed him in jail the very first time is, well, he knew he was committing a crime, I should say, but he didn't know it was a federal offense, because in his state where he had stolen a car just to go on a joyride, essentially, and it is a crime, yes, and he would have gone to jail if he got caught, whatever, but he had crossed the border over to another state, and in that state, it was a federal offense at the time, and landed him in prison right away. And I just, and it's funny how, like, stupid decisions, and obviously, again, he had committed a crime, so he deserved to go to jail, but, how do you deserve to go to the most notorious prison of all time up until that point because you stole a car? I mean, you're surrounded by killers and murderers. I mean, the likes of Al Capone had been there, granted in his elder state, as he was kind of losing his mind, if you will, from syphilis of all things. Again, something I learned on the tour. But I'm just going to take a second here to kind of, if you guys ever make it out to San Francisco, or if you guys live in San Francisco and have never been to Alcatraz, it's a heck of a walk. I mean, you're climbing up hills, and if you got back or knee problems or ankle problems, it can be kind of rough. But it was absolutely, like, beautiful and scary all at the same time. We went into the areas where the TV show Taps claimed were haunted. We were actually in solitary confinement. They allowed my wife to go in by herself and close the door. I had gone in. I didn't close the door. I'm one of those big horror movie buffs. Like, man, I've seen this one on the film. I ain't setting nothing up. All of a sudden the door opens up and it's 1943 and I'm in jail. Somehow some time loop shit happened and I'm stuck there. That ain't happening to me, man. But it was cool though. We went into the haunted areas. We got to see, some of the stories that were told there and everything like that. One time there was a prison riot essentially, and these guards, the 3 guards had lost their lives, if you will, and some of the inmates managed to obtain guns and everything and held down the prison for a couple of days, and they still have this hole in the wall where soldiers or officers threw in grenades, and you could see for the explosion on the concrete and the shrapnel pieces all across the wall, and it was so real to be there. It's just absolutely crazy. And the breeze and how cold it was, and we're talking the month of September, and it was freezing. And in our vacation, we managed to go to Seattle, Washington, Oregon, San Francisco, and BC, Canada, if you will. And we went up to Canada, and you assume Canada be the coldest. No, out of our whole trip, San Francisco was by far the coldest. I get the wind because we're there on the bay, but man, it was cold. I could only imagine how cold that water was. But yeah, it was just so real. And the comic was actually really good, and if I ever make my way back out there again, I probably would pick up some of the other ones just because I enjoyed it. It's a novelty. I'll definitely, place it into my collection of rare things, if you will. Just, again, I would recommend visiting Alcatraz, the Rock, if you will. And, of course, when you're exiting the gift center, everything that ever had anything to do with Alcatraz, the movie Escape from Alcatraz, the Rock you could purchase there. It's just so funny, all the different things that they had. And again, I was just so surprised to see a comic book. And I was like, hey, man, I run me and the boys, we're big comic book buffs. Why not? So, guys, anyway, Universe, I would say definitely pick it up if you're a collector of rare things, if you like American history. And just as a comic book collector, it's kind of a rare oddity that not everybody probably even knows exists. So, guys, I'd give it a solid 3 just because of the history factor of it alone. Well, Universe, until next time, I'm C-Dubbs, and I'll see you in the universe.